ahead, you may want to grab that camera. We gave you the warning so you can get a screenshot. Longview commuters can expect traffic delays over the next few weeks as the city works on several major roads. Here's a look at the roads affected. Spring Hill Road, McCann Road, West Hawkins Parkway, 4th Street, MLK Boulevard, and Cotton Street. They will all see an asphalt overlay. East Texas News Weekend's Michael Richardson looks at the work ahead, which is expected to last 6 weeks.
The city of Longview is working on asphalt overlays, which could bring delays to commuters over the coming weeks. West Hawkins Parkway, East Cotton Street, Spring Hill, and McCann Roads are some of the areas that will be undergoing an asphalt overlay. City of Longview spokesman Richard Yakeley says the work is part of keeping infrastructure up to standard.
And so it's a very special process where basically they come in and they mill up and refine the asphalt that is there, and then they're able to lay it back down. It's a cost savings for the resident, and it makes the road usable and extends its life.
Construction on a nearby road has led Luis Flores to change his commute.
I'd stop going down that way because I saw some construction signs up there, so I go this direction now.
The area near Bill Whittingham was also in need of repair.
You could drive up and down it, but it holes here, there, and yonder, and rough spots.
Yakeley is asking folks to keep an eye out for workers and to be aware of potential lane closures.
This is a short-term work in order to get that road smooth, back up to quality, and good for the coming years.
Michael Richardson, East Texas News Weekend.
And that asphalt overlays cost about $1.9 million. That money comes from the annual budget.